In the autumn of 1972, the suburban tranquility of Springfield, New Jersey, was shattered by a discovery that would haunt investigators for decades. What began as a routine missing person case transformed into something far more sinister when authorities uncovered evidence suggesting forces beyond conventional understanding had been at work. The official files remain partially sealed, but the fragments that have emerged paint a picture of ritualistic murder, occult practices, and supernatural phenomena that defy rational explanation. But first, don't miss out. Subscribe for regular doses of the unexplained. It was September 19, 1972, when 16-year-old Jeannette DePalma failed to return home to her family's modest house on Clearview Avenue in Springfield, New Jersey. The town of 27,000 residents had always prided itself on safety and normalcy, nestled comfortably in Union County's suburban embrace. Jeannette's mother, Florence DePalma, contacted local police that evening after her daughter missed dinner without explanation. The initial investigation revealed Jeannette had been seen earlier that day near the Springfield train station, apparently planning to visit friends in nearby Chatham. Witnesses described her boarding the train alone, carrying a small purse and wearing a distinctive blue dress with white flowers. She never reached her destination. For 6 weeks, the case remained a standard missing person inquiry. Springfield police conducted routine searches, interviewed friends and family members, and followed standard protocols. Detective Lieutenant Raymond Conroy, the lead investigator, later reported that nothing in those early weeks suggested the horror that would eventually unfold. On November 1, 1972, 2 local boys exploring the Howdale Quarry area discovered what appeared to be human remains scattered across a cliff face overlooking the abandoned stone pit. The location, known locally as Devil's Teeth due to the jagged rock formations, had long been avoided by residents who claimed strange sounds emanated from the quarry after dark. Union County investigators arriving at the scene encountered something unprecedented in their experience. The remains were arranged in what appeared to be a deliberate pattern, surrounded by makeshift wooden crosses and various occult symbols carved into nearby trees. Detective Conroy's official report, partially declassified decades later, described the scene as resembling a ritualistic altar. The body was identified as Jeannette DePalma through dental records. The medical examiner, Dr. Edwin Albano, determined she had been dead for approximately 6 weeks, placing her death shortly after her disappearance. However, the condition of the remains raised disturbing questions about what had occurred during her final hours. More unsettling was the discovery of additional evidence suggesting supernatural involvement. Several witnesses reported seeing strange lights hovering above the quarry in the weeks following Jeannette's disappearance. Mrs. Helen Morrison, who lived in a house overlooking the quarry, told investigators she had observed flickering flames on the cliff face multiple times during October, always appearing between midnight and dawn. The wooden crosses found at the scene bore unusual markings that local religious authorities could not identify. Father Michael Tester from St. James Catholic Church examined the symbols and reported they did not correspond to any known Christian iconography. More disturbing was his observation that the wood appeared to have been aged through unnatural means, showing decades of weathering despite being freshly cut. Detective Conroy's investigation revealed that several Springfield residents had reported disturbing encounters in the months preceding Jeannette's disappearance. Margaret Pearson, an elderly woman who lived near the quarry, claimed she had been approached by a group of strangers in dark clothing who asked detailed questions about local teenagers and their daily routines. She described them as speaking in whispers and moving in an unnaturally synchronized manner. The forensic evidence presented additional puzzles. Soil samples from around the remains contained traces of substances that the state laboratory could not identify. The unknown compounds appeared to be organic in nature, but did not match any known plant or animal matter from the New Jersey region. More puzzling was the discovery that the surrounding vegetation had died in a perfect circle, extending exactly 13 feet from where the body was found. Local residents began reporting increasingly strange phenomena following the discovery. Multiple witnesses described hearing chanting voices echoing from the quarry during nighttime hours, though searches revealed no human presence. The sounds were described as rhythmic and hypnotic, seeming to emanate from the stone walls themselves rather than any identifiable source. Perhaps most disturbing was the testimony of Robert Keller, a Springfield resident who claimed to have encountered Jeannette DePalma 3 days after her official disappearance. Keller reported seeing her walking along Morris Avenue near the quarry, wearing the same blue dress but moving in a jerky, unnatural manner. When he called out to her, she turned toward him with what he described as completely black eyes before vanishing into the tree line. The investigation took an even darker turn when authorities discovered that similar ritualistic symbols had been appearing throughout Springfield in the weeks following Jeannette's death. The markings were found carved into telephone poles, painted on abandoned buildings, and etched into the bark of trees in Missile Avenue Park. Each symbol appeared overnight, with no witnesses reporting seeing anyone creating them. Detective Conroy's team interviewed dozens of local residents about possible cult activity in the area. Several witnesses reported seeing groups of people in dark robes gathering in remote areas of the Watchung Reservation, particularly near the quarry. However, attempts to locate these individuals proved unsuccessful, as if they vanished whenever law enforcement approached. The case attracted attention from beyond Springfield when reports of the ritualistic elements reached investigators specializing in occult crime. However, their involvement was brief and shrouded in secrecy. Official records indicate that federal agents visited the scene, but their findings were immediately classified and removed from local jurisdiction. Medical examiner Dr. Albano later reported that his examination of the remains revealed anomalies he could not explain through conventional forensic methods. The bones showed signs of exposure to extreme heat, yet there was no evidence of fire at the scene. More puzzling was the discovery that several bones appeared to have been deliberately arranged in patterns that corresponded to astronomical alignments visible during the autumn equinox. The Springfield community became increasingly unsettled as reports of supernatural activity continued throughout the winter of 1972. Residents reported that animals began avoiding the quarry area entirely, with local wildlife disappearing from the surrounding woods. Even domestic showed signs of extreme distress when brought near the location where Jeannette's body had been discovered. Local newspapers initially covered the story extensively, but coverage abruptly ceased in December 1972, following what sources described as pressure from unspecified authorities. The Springfield Sun's editor, Harold Jameson, later claimed that his newspaper's files relating to the case had been confiscated by federal agents, though no official record of such action exists. The investigation faced additional complications when key witnesses began recanting their statements or disappearing entirely. Margaret Pearson, who had reported the encounter with strangers in dark clothing, was found dead in her home 3 months after Jeannette's body was discovered. The death was ruled natural causes, but family members reported that she had been in perfect health and had expressed fear about possible retaliation for her cooperation with police. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery that the area surrounding the quarry had been the site of similar, unexplained deaths dating back decades. Research into historical records revealed that at least 7 other individuals had died under mysterious circumstances in the same general location between 1920 and 1972. Each case involved young people found dead in ritualistic arrangements, though earlier investigations had been less thorough. The official investigation was quietly closed in March 1973, with no arrests made. Detective Conroy's final report, heavily redacted in the versions released to the public, concluded that while evidence suggested ritualistic murder, no suspects could be identified. The case was classified as unsolved, though rumors persisted that authorities knew more than they revealed. In the years following the case, several investigators who had worked on the DePalma murder reported experiencing recurring nightmares and psychological disturbances. Detective Conroy himself requested transfer to a different department and refused to discuss the case publicly until his death in 1998. His personal notes, discovered after his death, contained references to supernatural encounters and warnings about forces beyond human understanding. The quarry area where Jeannette DePalma's body was discovered remained a source of disturbing reports for decades. Urban explorers and paranormal investigators who ventured to the location frequently reported equipment malfunctions, unexplained sounds, and sightings of a young woman in a blue dress walking along the cliff face. Local authorities eventually restricted access to the area, citing safety concerns about the unstable rock formations. Most unsettling of all was the discovery made in 2003, when construction work near the quarry unearthed additional human remains. The bones were determined to be much older than Jeannette's, yet they were arranged in identical patterns and surrounded by similar occult symbols. Carbon dating suggested the remains were approximately 50 years old, placing them in the 1920s when the first unexplained deaths had been reported in the area. The DePalma case files remain partially sealed, with authorities citing ongoing investigation despite the passage of 5 decades. Freedom of Information Act requests have yielded only heavily redacted documents that raise more questions than they answer. The most disturbing revelation is that similar cases continue to be reported in the Springfield area, suggesting that whatever forces were responsible for Jeannette's death may still be active. What do you think really happened to Jeannette DePalma in those final weeks? And could the supernatural forces that seemingly claimed her life still be lurking in the shadows of Springfield? Subscribe to uncover more cases where the line between the explainable and the impossible becomes terrifyingly thin.